Good evening, fellow Reds. Welcome to your what is it? Days are getting lost on me now these days because we just football heavy Wednesday. I think it is. I'm sure it's Wednesday, but it's a night after a really good game. We're going to be talking about Liverpool versus Girona, the Champions League, what it all means. It's starting to get a little bit tasty in the competition now. But I'm glad that you're here. Please, while you're here, hit those likes, subscribe, leave us a comment, give us your thoughts about the game last night. But I'm joined by Dylan. How are you, Dylan?
Hi, Charlie. Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good, really good. And Harry, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. All good.
Oh, good. Right. So we've got another guest. I'm just going to make a couple of adjustments. Hello, West.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm good. Oh shit.
Good. Now you're there. Right. We're not. There we go. Now we got you in a proper position. It's not quite working. I'll let you sort that out, and then we'll carry on. But yeah, glad to see you again, West. You made your debut with me a few weeks ago, last week maybe. So I'm glad to see you again. So we can get some really good comments. There's a little bit of background noise on your side there, West. That's just a little bit distracting. So if there we go, it's like being at work. I'm trying to correct people. It's a little bit of background noise. It's just can't escape it. But yeah, we're going to kick off first of all with a bit of breaking news. Whether it's actually confirmed, but it's actually from a really reliable source. So Bruno Andrade, who is a reporter for UOL, a Brazilian highly rated network, news station, whatever you want to call them, but someone that seems to be in the know. He's really reliable in Brazil. He's come out and actually said that Liverpool are interested in a number 9. Now, that number 9 that he's been talking about is Joao Pedro of Brighton Hove and Albion. He's essentially, I'm going to quote and kind of paraphrase what's been said. So Liverpool have Joao Pedro as one of their priorities next summer. The club intend to start negotiations as early as January, since Brighton are one of the most challenging clubs to negotiate with. So we'll make that. We'll make of it as we will. But Dylan, what's your thoughts about Joao Pedro? The famous John Pedro, John Peter, whatever you want to call him. Does he excite you?
I think it could be an interesting one, really, because when you look at what we've got up front at the moment, one, Jota, when he's fit, he's fully reliable. He will finish and do what you need him to do. Darwin's going to keep splitting people, I think, in between. Are you in? Are you out of Darwin in terms of what you like from him? Not enough goals, but the work rate and stuff he puts in. So I think he's almost a mixture of the two of them in some ways, because he can hold the ball up, he can link up play, he can finish, but for me, he's still a little bit raw in terms of stuff like that when I watch him. I think sometimes he's still a little bit scruffy in front of goal. He's a little bit rushed, but I think with his age and how good he's come in the last couple of years, I think it's a positive thing to be able to kind of put him in and see if it was to work. But I think on that, you then need to look at, is Darwin then going to be sold? Is Jota then going to be sold? Whichever way it's going to go from there. And if that's the case, and we have to bring someone in like Joao Pedro, I think it's a longer term thing to be able to bring him in and see if it works for a season or two, and hopefully he develops from there. I don't think he's the finished project by any stretch of the imagination in terms of the out and out striker that potentially people are wanting to be, but I think it could be a positive thing if he was to come in.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at his stats, it doesn't excite me. I've got to be honest. He's only hit double figures once, and that was for Watford in the Championship. So far this season, he's played 9 games, scored 4, fair enough, and then contributed with 3 assists. Last season, played 31 games for Brighton, and he only scored 9 in the whole competition. Okay, looks like he's going to be breaking that for this season in a really good, challenging team itself. But do those figures really excite you, Harry? I mean, it's something that we've struggled for with a striker since Sadio Mane and Bobby getting goals that contribute to what Salah do. Is he the right person? Do you think he can bring everything that we're looking for?
I mean, on the face of it, I'd say those figures aren't exciting for any fan to see, but I think he's definitely one of those players that you could see move into a top 6 side and explode. And I think when you watch him, it's clear he's talented. You know, he was good for Watford, earned a move to Brighton, and he's not quite performed quite to their expectations, but he's still there. He's still got time. I think he plays quite a lot behind the striker sometimes as well. So maybe that sort of explains the lack of goals from time to time. Maybe he sort of has to balance with Danny Welbeck. I know they sort of interchange quite a lot. And yeah, I think it's almost similar to Mbuemo, where I think he hits good numbers, but at a top side like Liverpool, they could explode and hit those sort of world beater numbers. But I mean, the number 9 market is quite sparse at the moment. I think especially options for Liverpool. I think in an ideal world, Alexander Isak is up there, but there's not a lot going on right now, I don't think, in terms of realistic signings for a number 9.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I'll come back to a comment that Jay Muse has come out with, and I'm thankful for Jay just joining us as usual. But James Pearce, obviously, we know he has history with Liverpool, trying to break some interesting news. Liverpool are interested in a number 9. And we could go around and talking about the names, Gyökeres and Mamouche. You just mentioned there, Harry, about Isak being a player, Joao Pedro. They're not the high caliber players. Yes, okay, Gyökeres is smashing it in the Portuguese league, but this is the Portuguese league. You know, it's not the top leagues that we have in Europe. But West, let's kind of get your thoughts about Joao Pedro. I don't know if you caught the stats, but you know, it's not thrilling. But is there more to his game than what we see on paper? You know, the 9 goals don't actually give us the full picture as to what he could bring to this Liverpool team.
For me personally, Joao Pedro, for me, he's a potential that can join. As Harry said, he can join a big 6 side. But then, for Liverpool standards, I don't think Joao Pedro is ideal signing for me personally. Because now we have Jota. If Jota is on form, he scores goals. Nunez, it's hot and cold. So Joao Pedro, I don't rate him that much. I think he's a good player. He has potential, but then at Liverpool, like, you have to kick on. So I'm not too sure. I'm not a fan of him. Like, people are saying Liam Delap also. They're good strikers, but then I'm really not too sure about them because it's a hit or miss here. So I would go for I'll go for a Gyökeres.
Yeah. I mean, Gyökeres is again, as I said, he's scoring a lot of goals. But let's kind of do that comparison and what the type of player that we're looking for, Dylan. So let's start off with the way that we started off with the season. You know, Slot went with Diogo Jota as his number 9, his main central striker. Any thoughts as to why that is? The type of player that Jota is not just an out and out striker. There's a little bit more to his game, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think you've probably hit it there in terms of the link up he probably brings in between. He's also good on the floor with his feet and everything like that. So he does bring that kind of aspect. If you needed someone to drop slightly deeper, like where they've been playing Szoboszlai like almost alongside him when we're doing our press, so they always go as a 2 and kind of a 4 of a bank with the 2 wingers beside them. So I think it could be potentially some of that where he does have other aspects to his game, which potentially someone like Nunez doesn't, where it's more kind of go in behind the defense and kind of be that power up front rather than the link up kind of play between people. I think it's also partially because he's a better finisher than Nunez. I think that's probably why he's the number 1 in terms of when he is fit, because realistically the kind of way we've changed from where we were Jurgen Klopp, where we were all out attack, go every single time, and people were getting lots and lots and lots of chances in the game. We do still create lots, but with that more control that we have over games now, when you do get a chance, you want your striker to be that clinical finisher who's just going to go, I've got my chance, there's my opportunity, and I'll finish it. And I think between the two, when it's a kind of toss-up between them, when they're both fit, for me, that's why Slot probably does edge Jota, because he goes, if we get 3 chances for our striker, you'll probably score 1. If we get 5 for our striker, Darwin probably scores 1. So that's probably the kind of But for me, probably the main differences between the two of them in terms of when your manager's picking between the two.
Yeah, and I think a perfect example, funny enough, it involves both players there, Harry. There was a match last season. I can't remember who it was against, but Jota laid off a really fantastic header into I think it might have been Bournemouth away, where Jota headed it into Nunez's path, and Nunez just somehow chipped the goalkeeper from outside the box. I don't know if you remember, but that was an absolutely fantastic goal. But yeah, so I guess that's what we're trying to get in terms of Jota or the style of player that Slot is looking for. We all love Bobby. Bobby's the kind of the glue that made that Liverpool team under Klopp tick. And I'm guessing he's looking for that same type of player in Jota or Joao Pedro if he's able to do that. I guess maybe Nunez doesn't have that. And guys, I don't and people in the chat, I know there's been a lot of discourse in social media around Darwin and abusing him is definitely not right. There's place for constructive criticism. Yeah. This is a bit of a statement from myself. There's place for constructive criticism, but when you start attacking the player and the mentality and the man, that's not right. That's not something that we do as a fan base. Nunes has his faults. And the way I see it, we are one of the more tolerant fan bases. Whether in the ground or outside, watching in, we give our players as much time as possible. And I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Harry? We've backed Nunes to the hill as far as we can. Some people, will say he's not good enough. Some people will say give him time, give him opportunities, he will come good. Where do you lie in this?
I think I've loved Nunez since the day he walked through the door. Even those pre-season friendlies, I think he scored 4 against Leipzig, and I was over the moon for him straight away. And I've always liked his personality. I think he's always shown glimpses of what he can do, but he never sticks it together. I remember seeing a tweet from January this year. He was actually the first Premier League player to hit 10 goals and 10 assists in all competitions like last season.
From last season,
he's shown his ability to get the best numbers out of anyone, but I don't know if it's confidence. I don't know if it's just who he is. No one knows at this point. He's on his 3rd year, and we're still seeing what we were seeing in his first season, where we're at a point where we're thinking we could have had sort of a world-class, incredible finisher striker, and it's just not gone that way. And I think I don't like hating on any player. I don't sit on social media calling anyone out, but I think at the moment his best the best use of him is sort of off the bench. When we got a fully fit squad off the bench, 60th minute, go and press the opposition, chase him down. I think he's really good at that. But in terms of winning titles, winning Champions Leagues, I don't know if he's the finisher for that. But then I always pose the argument of, if we go and win the Premier League and Champions League this season with him up front and he scores 10 goals, but we go and win, then what? Do we criticise him? And then, but if we lose in the final and lose on the final day, then it's his fault. So it's very fine margins the way you judge a striker, I think.
Yeah, the way I see it, and West, I'll ask you as well. The way I see with Darwin, he's really highly emotive. He's a very emotional man. We saw the issue that he had with Uruguay against Colombia in the summer at the Copa America, where he went into the stands fighting everyone because the physical abuse, not just the verbal abuse, the physical abuse that his family and other people in the stands were getting. He's climbed into a stadium full of supporters who were punching and kicking. He's gone in and done that. Obviously, he's got himself into trouble with a ban, but that type of mentality does affect his play also, because you've seen him when he came off yesterday, how upset, how down he was, right, West? So there's that thing about him. He can't get out of his own head in that sense, and that's probably what it is, guys. Dylan, Harry, that's what you've mentioned there about being prolific. he just isn't that, in the sense of he overthinks, and that's his problem.
Nunez, yeah. As for me personally, hate, abuse, I don't agree with that. But then rightfully criticism, I do agree on that. So Nunez, I look at him and say, "Hey, this is your only season you have under the new manager. He has one season under me, this season." But then with Nunez, it's like the simple stuff which pisses us off. Nunez can score a curver out of the outside box and we'll go crazy. Then miss a tap in 5 minutes later. Nunez can chip a keeper. Brentford game, I heard you talked about it now. Cheaper keeper from a far end, and then you'll miss a sitter. So now Nunez, it's a bit hot and cold, and like the goals he scores, yes, class. But the chance that you miss in those points, the Newcastle game, 3-3, he missed bare open chances like tap-ins, he missed them. So now that's kind of costly. You can score the bangers all you want, but when we need you the most, one-on-one, are you gonna score? I'm sure everyone in this panel is skeptical will Nunez score one-on-one. Because we saw him miss a pole last season, an open goal. He missed it. He hit the pole. So now with Nunes, for me, I'm too hot and cold with him. I really don't know. Like, I really don't know what's up with him, because he can score a curler and then miss a tap in. He can do this, then miss another tap in the next day. So with Nunes, he has this season for me. I don't care what he does, but he has this season. And for me, I expect him to score 20 goals and above. The chance that we create, he needs to score more.
Yeah, and I think we'll end the Nunes chat. I do want to kind of concentrate on the on Joao Pedro, just kind of last round about Joao Pedro itself, and talk about figures. You know, Dylan, how much would you be happy for us to kind of part? And this is Brighton. Brighton, got silly money, over 110 million for Caicedo from Chelsea. They've got, okay, we got McAllister for an absolute bargain at 35 million or something along those lines, but that's because of a release clause. But what figures are we talking about here for someone that's 23? That's a positive, but hasn't hit double figures at all ever in his career in top flight football, other than the Championship, which is second division football.
Yeah, you've kind of hit it there as well about Brighton. They're pretty shrewd, and in all honesty, it's Chelsea have had the worst of it often, really, in terms of being rinsed for players often. But further down the line, like with Caicedo, Cucurella, and all that sort of stuff, they've had to pay big prices. But Brighton are that type of team where they say, no, we've developed this player, we've got him on a long contract, so there you go. If you want him, this is how much you have to pay. So they are quite a good team in terms of being able to just say, well, we won't sell him unless you pay what we want him to pay. So I think if you're looking at somewhere 50 to 60 million, I think is probably the ceiling for someone who's not really hit those types of heights. The only reason being is because of his age, mainly because they can still see that kind of long-term project off him. If he was hitting 10, 15 goals a season, then you probably can push for a little bit more than that. But I wouldn't be going much higher than that, if I'm honest, because if you look at some of the other players you can probably get for that, if you think Marmoush is probably going to be somewhere similar, Gyökeres is probably going to be more than that, but he can probably say, him and his agent will back that up with, but we've got this amount of goals this season. If you want us, come and pay that. So I think it's a conversation where I don't think if they put a massive price on it, then you go near it. You kind of just say, well, we'll hold off and see how he kind of gets on for the rest of the season. And if he gets 10, 15 goals, then we will pay the additional fee that you want for him. But for a January sort of signing, I think if you are thinking, like you said, only 4 goals this season and 9 probably the season before, then yeah, I think 50 million is really the ceiling of that kind of player for those sort of numbers, I think.
Yeah, and just looking at Transfermarkt and how they're describing his positional play. So and Harry, I'll come to you on this one. So he plays either a centre forward. He's mainly as a second striker, but sometimes can play as an attacking midfield. So essentially, a player that likes to drop deep and make chances, or likes to get involved in that respect. So very Bobby-esque. Is that encouraging to see that there's a player that would actually drop back and do what we would expect to see, Nunez do, or is he like an upgraded version of Jota? And then last thing, and the same question there, the last Dylan, how much would you be willing to pay? And for a player that really hasn't hit the heights as yet.
Well, in terms of his link-up play and dropping back, I think it would suit our system because I think it's always, since Jurgen Klopp came in, since he signed Salah, it's always been about the wingers. It's always been about getting numbers for them. You know, Mane and Salah were hitting, both of them, 20 goals plus for at least 3 or 4 years in a row. That's what the whole system was sort of designed around, and that hasn't exactly changed since Klopp's come in. I think Salah does drop back a bit more now. He picks up the ball a lot on the right, but he is the main target for goals, and he's obviously doing it to a ridiculous level again this season. So Joao Pedro coming in, you know, in the near future could sort of fit the system to help Salah score even more, or, you know, even play in the number 10 role, help Nunez out, help Jota out, you know. In terms of the price, I agree with Dylan. I think you couldn't go higher than 50 or 60 for a player that's hitting those numbers. And I agree on the idea that it's his age that keeps him that high. And you can't go any higher than that. 100%.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think the difficult thing is trying to find, if we're going to be spending big money on someone like Joao Pedro, trying to recruit that type of money for Nunez is going to be slightly difficult. You know, who's out there that's going to be willing to spend 50, 60 million to get Nunez, and I think that's going to be the difficult question. West, now that you're back, I'm going to ask one question just before we move on from Joao Pedro. If the club do buy him, and because the reason why I'm asking this, I've always felt that Nunez has been a bit more of a motive purchase from Klopp rather than a stats based, you know, data based decision. If Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes and the data analytics team there at Liverpool decide that Joao Pedro's the one, surely we're going to have more confidence that he's going to hit the numbers. He's about to, you know, probably break through that next level of his career and reach a level, you know, not Salah-esque, but in the sense of how Salah exploded, how Mane exploded, how Bobby exploded. You know, there's probably more to Joao Pedro coming in than Nunez ever did.
You see now with Nunez, if Nunez came for 35 million, we're never going to have these expectations for him. But Nunez came for 100 million. That's where the expectations come. Look at Salah and Mane when they arrived. Salah arrived 35 million at Liverpool. Mane, I'm not sure, but they were kind of cheaper, so we didn't have any expectations. They set the expectations themselves. So if Joao Pedro comes for 35 million at Liverpool, I'm not going to expect Joao Pedro to score 30 goals for me, to reach Salah numbers. I'm going to expect him just to be there in 15 goals, 15 GA. He must be around just like Firmino was. So now, with the Nunez saga comes from where it's the price tag, 100 million. We expected 30 goals from him first season. I did personally. But now Joao Pedro comes in for 35, 40. I wouldn't expect much from him. Never would. I'll expect like 15 GA.
Yeah, it's gonna be a difficult one. The only thing I'd say is whoever the club decide to bring in, considering the new structure on the Edwards and Hughes, they'll get our full backing. You know, so we'll close that chapter for today and see if see where that takes us. The next thing I want to talk about and actually do a bit of a more of a deep dive on yesterday's excellent win, really professional win. It's 6 out of 6, Dylan, in the Champions League. We're top of that league, and now built up a bit of a gap between ourselves and the next team. You know, how impressive, first of all, is that 6 out of 6? You know, they're just brushing teams away. What were your thoughts after yesterday's game?
Yeah, I think, like you said there, it was just a professional away performance yesterday. We just did enough to win the game. Didn't have to overexert ourselves massively in a lot of areas. And was it pretty? No. Did anyone care? No. We walked away with 3 points and took us to 18, 6 out of 6. So, and when you look at the way the Champions League's gone so far as well, it's going really kind of unspoken about the fact that we've only conceded 1 goal, and that was probably in the first 10 minutes against AC Milan. And since then, we haven't conceded another goal in the Champions League. So defensively, it just shows kind of how big of an effect that's having on the games where we can just go to these teams and go, well, we'll beat you 1 and 2-0, and it doesn't really matter. We'll just get through this group stage, winning games as comfortably as we need to, get through it, and then for these next 2 games, realistically, we probably need a point to guarantee top. So if even against Lille, if we put half of our team out really against Lille, hopefully we should still have enough to at least get a point in that game, and then put the rest of the team out for the last game we go away at PSV and don't really worry about it from there. I just think we've justified ourselves to be able to be in a position to just go right off the last 2 games we're already kind of through. And I know we said kind of about the permutations of who we can get, but realistically, first or second, you're going to get either of those teams anyway. So we're probably up there regardless of what happens in these last 2 games. So I think last night, professional performance, just about did enough to win the game. Didn't have to create 15, 20 chances. And I actually quite enjoyed that it was a good workout for the lads, considering we didn't play at the weekend. So I didn't mind the fact that sometimes they got through. Alisson got a bit of a chance to have make a few saves and get himself worked up for when he does step back into the team, which I know you don't want to see your keeper making saves after saves, but to see Alisson make 5 or 6 saves in his first game back was positive for when he does need to step back in. So, yeah, I think just all positive, really, from last night.
Yeah.
Take the 1-0 win for what it was.
Yeah, and actually that was a good lead up into my next question for you, Harry. How good and how important is it that Alisson is back? Yes, we know Kelleher is a really, really good number 2. And we'll forget the issue, the error that led to Newcastle's equaliser. There's enough in the bank with Kelleher for me to say that he may have one bad day. We've seen it with Alisson, but in terms of if we want to get far in this competition, get far in leading this league title charge, we need Alisson Becker as our number 1 in between sticks, and not an injury free, right?
Yeah, I saw a lot of people sort of argue that Alisson shouldn't get straight back in. He wants us to earn his place. And I think as much as Kelleher impressed us, we saw how good he was. He's probably got himself in at least top 10 keepers in the league sort of conversation, or at least around it. He was that good. Obviously, the mistake against Newcastle, every keeper makes a mistake every now and then. None of them are perfect. But I think people sort of forgot who Alisson was a little bit and how good he really is. By far, the best keeper in the world is distribution. I know Kelleher's was good, but some of the when he kicks out of his hands, Alisson straight to Salah and creates a goal and stuff like that, you can't get anywhere else. And I think he was. I've just seen some of the comments say he was man of the match, and I agree, because he did have to make some very important saves. And I think, it's really good to have him back. I think the squad morale will be up. I think, it's good to have him back, and I think everyone should be happy.
And I think it should be noted how important that Alisson has a beard, because as soon as he loses that beard, all his power goes, and then he gets injured, and then that's it. We lose him for weeks. But there's 2 things I want to talk about. West, I'll ask you the first thing, and then Dylan the second thing. The first thing is he looked quite slim. He looked quite trim yesterday. I don't know if there was something around the physique that he had that led to those injuries, but maybe we've actually seen something where he needs to kind of trim down. He looked kind of a little bit more thinner in the face. I don't know if you noticed that, but there's a few comments in our chat about how slim he looked. How important, that is probably something that we've recognised. I don't know if you saw it, or if any of the guys did you recognise that? Did you see that, West? Did you see that? No? Well, it must be just me. Well, there was definitely a couple of guys that noticed that he was a little bit slimmer. I'll move on to the next question. The second thing was how easy he makes saves look. So yesterday, yes, he made 5, 6 saves in the first half, but those saves looked really easy when someone, there's a particular Manchester-based goalkeeper that isn't able to save shots straight at him. But Alisson's just a different class above every goalkeeper, right?
Yes, he is. For me, Alisson is world class. I keep saying it. He's with him, and like you see us with 5 backs, like the ribs is Alisson, Van Dijk, Trent, Salah, and Robertson. So I look at Alisson as the moment Ali's at goal, I trust Liverpool won't concede a goal. Like I really trust Alisson in that way. So with Alisson having him back, making some saves, and he made them look so simple. Like they're just simple saves. We have certain keepers from Manchester can't make those simple saves. So it's a topic for another day though. But then yeah, having Alisson was great, just getting him to warm up, and then we'll see how the season goes.
Yeah, yeah, and with Christmas coming up, with the heavy fixtures, Dylan, we've got actually I did have the fixtures up, and just with so many, so we've got Fulham at home on Saturday. Would you start Alisson for that game, or would you wait? Because we've got the EFL Cup quarter final against Southampton away. What would you do in that term? Would you just kind of still throw him in and let him get on with it, and then Kelleher comes back for the cup match, or would you bring Kelleher back for the league game?
Well, I think it could work either way, really, because you could say that he gets a rest in whichever game you decide to play Kelleher or Alisson in, because I don't think either of them is going to play both, depending on who starts, because of the way we're going to probably rotate if they're both fit. But I think in terms of last night, he seemed okay. He seemed like he was fully fit again. He seemed like sharp again. So for me and Steve are probably the two biggest advocates for Kelleher being two Irishmen in the group chat that we've got. But even I accept that Alisson obviously is that step above. Nothing will ever change that. He's the number one keeper in the world. So if he's fit, he quite rightfully walks back into the team for me because of who he is. So it would be Alisson at the weekend, and then it would be Kelleher in the midweek in the cup for me. If Alisson is absolutely fully fit.
Yeah, yeah. I think Steve may need a little bit more convincing before dropping Kelleher, but that's a conversation for him to take up. So let's kind of just have a look at the general kind of the play. So we got 62.5% now. These stats are provided by Opta, so really really reliable. So 62% possession yesterday. The interesting thing was in terms of possession lost in our defensive half. We only lost 13 times compared to Girona's 37. Now, in that first half, it did seem like there was a lot of long turnovers. The stats kind of do suggest it was a bit of a false indicator. It's just that I think Girona just got lucky in terms of duels and where they actually won it. But we actually played all right in that first half in the sense of possession lost. We only lost 4 against their 20. We probably just should have done better with the ball, right, Harry? What was the issue in that first half? Defensively, we probably weren't at it altogether, but should we have done better with possession in terms of how we use the ball? Because we got a lot of possession, we've got a lot of respect from Girona, but what was actually missing from that first half?
Yeah, I think in terms of hold on to the ball, there wasn't a problem. I think the play from our own half was fine. It was perfect. But as soon as we got anywhere near the goal, it looked a bit panicked. It looked a bit rushed. It looked like they almost didn't know what they were doing, which obviously do. But I almost think maybe as much as we were happy that the derby was postponed on the weekend, they might have been slightly rusty from the week before. Maybe the rest was good for the fitness, but not so much for the sharpness. But I think, just they were getting into the good positions, just couldn't do anything with it. Obviously, eventually, we won a penalty in the second half and it worked out. I think at the back as well, when he talked about sort of a little bit of defensive fragility, I think it was just Gomez he's played centre-back the last few weeks, but he's sort of just moulding back into that role again. I think it's quite difficult having to play right back or left back last season, then all into right back and then back to centre-back. I think that isn't easy for a player, but I think he looked okay. I know he got megged that one time and I was quite worried. But in general, it was slightly slow performance, but in the end, they got the result, so we can't really complain.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a really good comment around about the rhythm of the team. Klopp spoke about it, and I'm sure that Slot talks about rhythm and just fluency of the team. When it came to that second half, what was the key things for you there, West? the subtle changes. So in terms of personnel, we didn't change anyone at half time. You were still quite happy to go with the team that started the match. But was there at that point when you were watching it, was there something that we needed to do differently?
For me personally, I think so. That we had to do like move the ball quicker, I guess. Like because I felt like in that game, besides the penalty, I don't think we looked like scoring. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think they looked like scoring. So now I felt the game would be a draw. The penalty actually saved us. But I can't take much from the game because all I wanted was a win. But then like they looked a bit rusty. After the weekend, they're not playing in the weekend. They looked a bit rusty. They were too slow. They were too nervous a bit. The passes weren't too sure. The chance that were there, the chance to shoot, they chose to pass. The corners. So now it wasn't a great game. Even like I know you guys saw Slot's comments about the game, like, and I completely agree with him that like you can't give a certain team so many chances like that and then not get punished. He said if we play Madrid or City, we have to be more intense. We have to be more intense. And he said about the pressing, where like Girona would just bypass our press, just like that, and run through the middle. For me, that was question marks there where like I felt like he should have played Endo. As I said, he should have added Endo in the team to just lock up. But then yeah, that's how I can say a win is a win.
Yeah, I absolutely. That's all that matters, isn't it? In terms of the result. But Dylan, I'm still going to keep on with the stats. It's really interesting. The stats that I'm looking at in terms of the first half. The final third entries, we got 35 in the first half when comparing that to 30 in the second half. Through balls, we only got one in the second half, but three in the first half. So again, I think it's the kind of the point that Harry was talking about. We actually made really good opportunities to, get ourselves a goal up, but it was just the fluency. Was the key thing there around the rhythm? Was the lack of rhythm really the hindrance around that performance in that first half?
Yeah, I think it possibly is to do with the rhythm of it because even though, yes, physically in the legs they got a rest for the game at the weekend with the derby being off, these lads are used to playing 3 or 4 days, every 3 or 4 days, one after each other, bang, 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 one goes Europe, League, Cup, League. They're used to doing these types of things. So when they've got into that rhythm and they've got into that kind of period of 6 to 8 weeks of continuously 2 games a week, 3 games sometimes if need be, like it's going to be over Christmas kind of periods, they get used to that, and it can just be a case of you don't start a game as you normally would. You're just a little bit sluggish. And I think also in the game yesterday, it kind of has gone a little bit underplayed as well in terms of the first and second half was almost willingness and motivation against quality because let's face it, Girona, I think they were in the 5th tier of the Spanish leagues not too long ago. So
Yeah.
realistically, realistically, even though they play Barcelona, Real Madrid in their league every once in a while, we're their biggest tie they've ever had when you consider their European ties. So that first half will have been the extra step because it's their biggest game the club's ever had. Let's get there. Let's get into tackles. And like you said, in terms of we didn't give the ball away too much, but they still seemed to create chances. It's almost they won a couple of duels because of the way they were more motivated in that first half, create some chances from there. Then second half, the quality of us showed a little bit more. We started to control the game more, pass them around as they started to tire. And ultimately, the penalty is what it is. We won 1-0. And you just go from there. So I think that's almost kind of the things in that game as well, because they did come out all guns blazing almost and had a little bit more energy than in the first 15, 20 minutes. And it could be a result of a couple of factors like that.
Yeah, and the way I described it to a friend, Girona, essentially, Harry, I'm going to come to you with this one. Girona had nothing to lose. This is probably their biggest, one of the biggest fixtures outside of the Clásicos that they have in their league. I, they knew that they needed to try to get some type of result to salvage their European competition. I guess it's just one of those things where it felt like a cup tie. It's the big boys are coming to town. Let's show them. Let's not give them too much space. Let's get in the faces. They're obviously better than your normal kind of cup teams from lower leagues that we face in the FA Cups and whatnot. But we've got to give them a little bit more respect. They have got some really good players. Brian Gill, okay, he's not done too well in his time in England, but there's still a player with caliber there. So, and the teams that they have, the players that they have there are still good enough, right? So they should be respected. And even though we didn't get out of second gear, we still did and what we had to do, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think it was probably a case of, it was their ground, they had the fans behind them, one of their biggest fixtures ever, and they're fired up for it, they're going for it, and our side probably looked at it as, they're about 8th in La Liga, somewhere like that, and they probably thought, well, we can just stroll in and get a nice little win. We've beaten everyone else, so why aren't we going to beat these? And I think they just maybe got a bit passive, and sort of they could have let it slip. They didn't. It was fine. But I think that's sometimes the mindset they're going into games at the moment, especially the way they're just demolishing the best teams. They're probably thinking, if we've gone and hammered City or battered Real Madrid, but Girona's a walk in the park, right? But no game's ever the same, especially in the Champions League. It's always unpredictable, and I don't think they factored in for that too much when they first rocked up yesterday.
Yeah, totally agree. And then I'm gonna just come on to the second half and the substitutions. Again, we've spoken about Nunez. We're not going to talk about Nunez in that respect. He had his chances. He didn't get them. But in terms of Luis Diaz and him winning that penalty, Gakpo looking lively when he came on. I mean, how important is it, West, that Harvey Elliott is back in the team? I don't know what your thoughts about Harvey Elliott, but I like Harvey. I think he's a really, really good player, really underrated. But how important is it that we get another body back into that midfield, into that attacking spot where Salah can have a rest, where Chiesa's now coming back and we can ease him in? What do you think?
With Harvey Elliott coming back, I actually like Harvey Elliott too. I liked him at the back end of the season. He was doing pretty well. I'm actually a big fan of him. So Harvey Elliott coming in, if let's say Soboslai is having a bad game, we can bring him in who can change the dynamic of our game. So now having him in this time for a title charge is actually a great thing. Like having Chiesa in also for ideas. Let's say Salah is having an off game, which he doesn't have, but let's say just one of those games, we can bring a Chiesa on. So having Elliott yesterday I was pretty much happy for him to come on the field.
Yeah. I mean, Dylan, with Harvey coming in, and I think it's really, really interesting how he could fit into this team. Something that's been quite different in Klopp's time. There's certainly a position there and I love Soboslai. I think Soboslai's a really, really good player and really underrated. He does a lot for the team. He's starting to find his feet in that position where he's asked to do a little bit more. 10 yards further up, but it's a different role where he's a disruptor rather than making things happen as such. Harvey's a different player where it's the opposite. Yes, he'll run all day, but there's a player that can find a pass. Like Jones, like McAllister, just having that another body that can actually find that pass is going to be really vital against these low block teams, right?
Yeah, I think Harvey is a really, really good squad player as well. Like you said, he's got lots of different attributes that some players have, one or the other, and he's got a little bit of both, really. He's one of them players who is going to bring energy to your midfield. He's going to bring you forward when you need him to. But equally, if you need to unlock a defence, he does have the quality on the ball to find those short passes and kind of between the line passes as well. So he does bring a real good mixture to the midfield when he comes in as well. I have seen a couple of times people suggest him playing on the right, and I know he's played there a couple of times when Salah was injured. Didn't have a couple of games last season where he stepped in, but for me he's more kind of that midfield kind of role. I don't really think he brings as much of a threat in terms of the wing position when he does play there. But in terms of attributes, he's almost like a mixture really of Szoboszlai's energy and Jones's passing. So he kind of really is a good squad player because he kind of brings different aspects to the game that will be needed as and when we have different games. Because like you say, when we play against the low block, if you need an extra person to come on, so you've got Jones and Elliott who can unlock, or Jones and Elliott and McAllister who can unlock. But then if you need more energy against the team, you can equally do that alongside Szoboszlai or instead of Szoboszlai. So I think it's really positive that he's back. And I was actually gutted for him at the start of the season as well, because I thought this could be a really big season for him, having had a good season last season and then coming back in this season to build on it. to kind of get the injury he did at the start of the season right at the very beginning was a little bit gutting for him, in all honesty. And he's my son's favourite player as well, so my son was absolutely devastated when he got injured. So yeah.
Bless. I mean, I think it's really interesting looking back at pre-season, Harry, and the position that Harvey was put in. You know, there's one particular goal, I think it may have been for Carvalho, where he just essentially just chipped the whole of the defence. I think it may be against Arsenal or United, one of the two, where he chipped the ball. You know, that's the type of player that we would love to be able to see week in, week out, who gives enough to the team. But you know, there's definitely a spot for Harvey. Would he get minutes though? That's the thing, because it seems like Szoboszlai's Slot's favourite, and Slot doesn't tend to rotate as much these days. So do you think we can still get the best out of Harvey in that number 10 position?
Well, yeah, I think there's no doubt that in an ideal world with a fully fit squad, those two are sort of options for each other. It's one or the other in that side. And I think Szoboszlai, I always think he's just that little bit of quality away from genuinely being one of the best midfielders in the league. I think athleticism-wise, pressing-wise, he's already brilliant. He does so much work for the team. And, you know, I think that goes amiss sometimes. People don't really see it as much as others. And that's why he gets a lot of stick from time to time. But I think we've seen he can score, he can hit, he can strike a ball, but it just hasn't clicked so far. You see him line up a strike, you get excited and he scuffs it. Or you see him over a free kick. I don't think we've seen a free kick clear to the wall yet, but give it time. Those might start flying in, his shots might start flying in, his passes will be perfect. But for the time being, I think against, you know, a high intensity side, Man City, when they're at the best, Arsenal, Real Madrid, those sorts of games, I think Szoboszlai is the option because of the pressing side of things. But when you're against a low block, as you said, he produced that chip. It was against Arsenal for Carvalho, I'm pretty sure. When you're putting it to a low block, a defensive side, I think, and you won't have to press as much, that's when Elliott can come in and start and provide that little bit of creativity to score a goal, sometimes from nowhere. Maybe a pass that all the players wouldn't see. So we've just got to wait and see how Slot integrates him, takes things. I mean, I'm excited to see him. I think he's brilliant in that number 10. Keep him away from the right. He's not got the legs for the right-hand side. He's definitely number 10. I don't think anyone argues that now, though. But yeah, I'm excited to see him.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think with Szoboszlai, there's a small percentage that if he can find that small amount of percentage in key areas, we're going to have an absolute outstanding player, and we just need to find out and unlock that to really make the full use out of his skills. But we're really close with that. So the next thing and kind of the last thing we want to just be talking about is the Champions League itself and the new format. I was going to go around really quickly and ask West first of all, what's your opinions about the Champions League, the new format, and you know the expanded format? So there's 36 teams compared to 32 last year. So there's a lot more teams. There's essentially the group stages have been replaced by one giant league with all the teams essentially playing each other in the sense of, you know, it's just taking one team that play 8 teams from the 36 and they kind of rotate home and away. They don't play each other twice in a league competition. You know, what are your thoughts at the start of the competition? Did you buy into the idea of this type of format?
At first, I didn't. Like, I was a bit lost when it came to the format. Like, I didn't know what was going on, didn't know what we were going to do. And then when I got more about the format, I was like, okay, so pretty much cool format. Because I know on the last day, the teams that are on like struggling, I know the last day of the draw, it's gonna be a crazy one because you see PSG struggling, you see certain small teams are struggling, like Madrid, not small teams, but big clubs, Madrid and them are struggling, you know. So I honestly the last house when I kick off. The only thing I have disadvantage with the format is that of course we play big teams, but then for me personally, I want to check the big teams to be played in the round of 16s going forward. Not in the group stages. For me personally, I want to first Madrid in the quarterfinals. I want to verse AC Milan in the round of 16s, not in the group stage, because I think it takes away the fun of it, of like the intensity of the game, like the excitement. Because now, if I play AC Milan, I play this AC Milan, and I meet them again, I'm gonna win that game again. Like it's pointless. So for me, it's kind of a nice draw, but then like the teams that they play each other, big teams like today we have Juventus and Man City. That game's a quarterfinal game. But not the round of 16. So yeah, that's my take on the
Yeah,
draw.
I mean, it's interesting you talk about, oh, you'd want us to play, Real Madrid in round 16. The way that the competition, Dylan, actually has kind of petered out, well, has worked itself out, is that the way that I understand it, and I think this is pretty factual. So if we end up as either first or second in the round of 16, because we don't play the two legs playoff, we would play either one of the teams from 15, 16, 17, or 18th position in the league. Now, funny enough, the way if the league format was to end today, those teams consists of Benfica, Atletico, Milan, and Real Madrid. They're tough games, in a round 16. It's you wouldn't want that every year, or any type of opponent in a knockout stage. Funny enough, actually, we could be end up with the biggest game, round 16, Liverpool versus Real Madrid or Liverpool versus Atletico. It's starting to get tasty, right?
Yeah. I've just checked it actually live, Charlie, and it's moved on from there now because of the games being on. So
Yeah, go on.
at the moment we've got Sporting, Milan, Feyenoord, and Club Brugge are those teams, or Club Brugge, whichever you want to say it. So
Okay.
in terms of that, if that was to be live, you'd take realistically any of them if you were to get them. But from the teams that are somewhere in that, just before we kind of came on, knowing that we were going to talk about this, I just kind of looked at where people were and kind of where they might end up, and I was just looking through kind of permutations of potentially who we could potentially get in that sort of region. So from like 9th or 10th down to probably 16th or 17th, Madrid and that were in there, but realistically the two games they've got left, they're probably going to finish on 12 or 15, more realistically 15 points. AC Milan got quite a comfortable run in for games, so they're probably going to be on 15, 18 points. Benfica, again, winning, I think they scored tonight, but then it was disallowed, so it's still 0-0, but they're realistically going to be on 12, 13 points. So the teams that are in that sort of bracket still, the ones that are more realistic, are Club Brugge, Sporting Lisbon, potentially Celtic if they were to get another result somewhere, Monaco, Feyenoord, all kind of teams in that sort of bracket, depending on the fixtures that they've got left. Because I was just looking at who they're potentially playing in these last two games and what kind of points they're on at the moment. But it's really kind of difficult to say as well, because all it takes is them to lose a couple of games and the teams that are 19th downwards to win a couple of games, and then it swaps and changes again. So you're never going to be able to predict who they're actually going to get. But it does throw up potential for a massive tie, though, because like you said, if AC Milan were to lose one of those games and they finish on 12 points, we could end up with them in that bracket. So it could be any of them.
Wow. Yeah. Actually, see, I think at the start of the competition, and Harry, I'll come to you about this one. I wasn't absolutely convinced. I just felt, oh, this big league kind of competition. It's essentially the big teams will just win their first 4 or 5 games, get maximum points as such, and then they can just see out. Now, essentially, Liverpool are in that position, aren't they? So we've won 6 from 6. We could actually look to rest players in our last 2 league fixtures, but teams like what Dylan's just spoken about there, and what I had listed down, Benfica, Atletico, Milan, and Madrid, if they had lost, or dropped points in the next 2 games, it gets really, squeaky bum time for them. And so the beauty of the competition is actually seeing now is all those permutations, all those different teams are coming in. And so your thoughts about the competition, do you think it's a good competition now though at this stage, or are you still unconvinced?
Yeah, 100% when they announced they were changing it, I think everyone's thoughts were, why on earth would you change?
It's just the Super League, right?
Yeah, why would you fix what isn't broken? Like, it works. Everyone loves the Champions League, but now it's come in. I think I like the idea of watching Liverpool play 8 different teams. That's quite exciting to me, rather than seeing them play the same 3 teams twice. You know what I mean? I think that's a bit more interesting. Whether for the teams, I think it adds a lot more unpredictability. because, you know, if you play in those same teams, you sort of know what to expect. Whereas now it's 8 different challenges. You could be going anywhere, you're at home, away. And I think that's quite interesting. And I've enjoyed it so far. I think a big part of maybe enjoying it is the fact that we've won all our games. That's probably a big part of it. If we were towards the bottom, maybe I wouldn't be saying that. But yeah, I think I've enjoyed it so far. I think I like it. And yeah, but at the end of the day, you know, we know why they changed it. It's more money in their pockets. But if it works and it's entertaining, then we can't really complain.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's just been, I don't know how true it is, but I'm guessing because Jay has mentioned it, the BBC, the World Cup that we had recently out there in the Middle East recently, you know, I was never convinced about that World Cup. It actually turned out to be a really good competition, from a football perspective. From a human rights perspective, let's not talk about it. You know, we can go into it, and it's one of those things that it shouldn't happen. The things that did happen, but the actual football, the caliber of football, the 3 full games a day, that was just brilliant. And I think in the sense what I'm trying to get at is there's another kind of way to look at this. Yes, there's more games and there's more money in the game itself, but it is throwing up some interesting ties. And I'll come back to you, West, about this one as well. I guess, you know, it's though the competition is more structured in the sense of we know if we come first, then we will play X team, and then after that the quarterfinals, the semi-final, and the route to the final essentially in Munich. I think it's Munich this year. Um, it's all kind of laid out, and that takes the joy out of the actual live draws that they do, you know, every now and again. But is some of the romantic notions lost in this type of competition when we get to the actual knockout stages?
What's the question again?
So the question is, because we know the route to the final, is the actual excitement of being a fan of not knowing who you're going to face, has that gone?
No, not really. Not really. Like, for me, just as a Liverpool fan, the last time we won the Champions League, I knew who I was facing. So every time I have these draws, like being a surprise now, I prefer knowing from now which team I'm going to face and how Arne Slot can plan for those teams. Where if he's facing a Madrid, he can plan for how he's going to face Madrid. Then he calculates he's facing another team. So now I look at it as a planning how the team can go forward, how the team can prepare. Not the draw where it was okay, Barcelona. Then the first leg of the game we're 3-0 down. Then we had to come and prepare 4-0. We won 4-0. But then for me, it doesn't take away from the size of the game. It just makes it more simpler. More teams can actually plan what they're doing. And yeah, so that's my point.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think it will be interesting to see over the next couple of games. And interestingly, I'm just gonna finish it up because we're coming up to an hour. The last thing is, isn't it weird that we're still playing Champions League group matches coming into the January, Dylan? You know, is that a bit of like a weird one? Is that something that needs to be worked on in terms of the number of games that we're playing? Eight league games, where 2 of them are going into January. Should we just scrap international breaks and move to more club games in that respect?
Yeah, I think in terms of that, it almost takes away, like you were touching on, the romantic side of football. Almost like when you think, I shared the video in the chat the other day of 20 years ago when Gerrard smashes that one against the Olympiacos, knowing that we needed 2 goals in the last minute to get through before Christmas. And it was the kind of thing with them was you need to get through your group stage to have European football after Christmas as your reward almost for doing well in your group. So that side of it is lost as well. What I would say as well, though, is money talks in terms of these types of situations. Like you touched on it, it's almost like a compromise because the Super League wasn't going to happen. How can we still appease these teams with the amount of money that it's going to take and the sponsorship it's going to take? So they put 8 games in, so it's more games for money for them to be at some of the ties against each other. It could have still worked in the same format if we just played 6 different teams and it was done by Christmas still. The only argument then is with 36, with the amount of teams that are in it, are you playing enough to warrant kind of sample size and stuff like that, the amount of points you could potentially finish on is kind of is an argument, I guess, in that sort of respect. From that though, I've kind of enjoyed as well the fact that it is a different team each time, because like you've seen with Real Madrid, the teams know they're only going to play them once. So like Lille have beat them, AC Milan have gone there and beat them, we've beat them. You know, you're only going to have to play them once in the group, and you can go all out to try and get your result in that game. But I think after Christmas, it should be the knockouts for me. It just feels right, doesn't it? That's what it's always been, that your reward after Christmas is a European tie afterwards for getting through your group stage. So yeah, it's just a bit different, isn't it?
Absolutely, I agree. Okay, lads, I'm gonna end a really excellent stream. We've spoken about transfers, Nunez, and we've given a bit of thought about the game from last night, and then we did a bit of a deep dive in regards to the Champions League and all the permutations and what it could happen. We've got live updates from Dylan, who's telling us, we could actually ended up playing Sporting rather than Real Madrid. It's interesting time. Let's keep on going. I just want to say thank you for Dylan, for Harry, to West for joining me tonight. It's been absolutely brilliant. Always a pleasure. Just want to say thank you to the chat as well. There's been loads of comments and really, really good things. And I think the Darwin Nunez stuff kind of hit home with a lot of people there as well. So I'm glad that's done there. So we're back tomorrow again as usual with a 7:30 UK time stream. So please join us there. Hit the likes, hit the subscribes, hit everything, whatever you want to do, and join us again tomorrow. Up the Reds, top of the league, not just one league, all the leagues. Bring it on. Let's bring on the internationality. Good night.